Ah, the old adage, be careful what you wish for, never felt so real until my Uncle Phil stumbled upon an uncanny situation. You see, Uncle Phil was always a fan of horror, a connoisseur of the macabre, if you will. He'd often say, there's no thrill like a good scare. Well, he got more than he bargained for when he found himself living the 5 nights at Freddy's experience, in his own backyard, no less. Imagine, if you will, a man in his 60s, who has spent the better part of his life indulging in horror and suddenly waking up to the eerie sight of Freddy Fazbear and his animatronic pals right outside his window. I thought I'd seen it all, he'd say, but this is something else. Uncle Phil's backyard had turned into a real-life horror show, complete with animatronics that would make even the bravest souls quiver. I'd always appreciated a good horror story, he mused. But waking up to Bonnie the bunny's glowing red eyes in the middle of the night, it's a whole different ballgame. Every night, he'd recount, was like a scene straight out of the video game. It was as if I was living in a nightmare, he'd say. The sounds, the movements, the fear, it was all too real. And yet, even in the midst of this bizarre situation, Uncle Phil couldn't help but appreciate the irony of it all. I've spent years scaring myself silly with horror movies, books and games, he'd laugh, and now the horror is right in my backyard. It's like I'm living in my very own 5 nights at Freddy's game. But as days turned into weeks, Uncle Phil began to see the situation in a different light. It's not just about the scares anymore, he'd say. It's about understanding the line between fiction and reality. It's about appreciating the thrill of horror, but also recognizing its limits. The situation was indeed a peculiar one, a strange twist of fate that turned a horror fan's fantasy into a nightmarish reality. But it also served as a reminder that sometimes the things we wish for may not be what we truly want. In Uncle Phil's words, sometimes the horror is best left on the screen. And as we reflect on his unexpected ordeal, we can't help but agree. After all, who'd want to wake up to Freddy Fazbear in their backyard? Not me, and certainly not Uncle Phil. Uncle